All right, who is excited to be in church this morning? Come on. So, as Pastor Charlie said, my name is Caylob. I'm one of the campus pastors here. But before we get started in today's service, I want you to help me welcome all those watching online and in Peru. So, welcome them. And I need some prayer today, so let's pray before we get started. So, Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to be here, God. I pray that myself included, Lord, all of us here, all of us in Peru, online, everybody that hears this message, Lord, that you would give us eyes to see what's in your word, ears to hear, to be able to understand, and hearts that are ready to receive it. Father, lead and guide us. Lead and guide me today. Speak through me. Lord, just be in this place, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so I am excited to be here. This is such an honor, super excited. But before we get into the message, I want to just share with you, because the folks online in Peru don't know who I am probably, so I'm going to share with you my family, kind of the reason why I am the way I am, because they keep me going and my wife keeps me out of trouble. But first is my wife, Christina. She is my pride and joy of life. She is everything to me. We've been married for 14 years, and we met here at the church. Who's been to a get-to-know-us luncheon? Anybody? We got 1, 2, 3. Well, if you haven't been here in Kokomo, you'll get to hear me share this story. But for those in Peru and online, me and Christina met here at Abundant Life Church. Not this building. It was on north of Kokomo. But I came to church one day. It was my first time at Abundant Life Church, sitting right probably in that section right there. And there was this gorgeous redhead on stage. She was on the worship team. She was singing. And at this time, I lived in North Carolina, so I wasn't looking for a relationship. But, my dad actually introduced us after church. And, once she met me, she was hooked. So she's not here this morning. We've got 4 kids. And so, we've got 3 boys. 3 boys. There we go. Cohen is here in the middle. This is Everett. And that's Maverick. He did get his name from Top Gun. That was my suggestion. They're awesome kids. And then my daughter, Isla. Man, I know, right? So I love all of my kids equally, but something is different. It's the same love, but a father to a daughter is completely different. And man, she's got me wrapped around her finger. And in fact, she actually takes up a lot of space on my phone. So most of my pictures are of her. And so, but I love them all the same. But that's my family. They're my reason for being and doing what I do. So now I will get into kind of my story and how I am going to use my story for His glory. And even though what I share about me may be different than your world, it may not translate directly into what you've experienced. But as we get into the message, you will see that this message is for every single person in this room. It's for everybody watching and in Peru. It doesn't matter your age, your occupation. It doesn't matter what you've experienced, if you've had a great life or if you've had a horrible life. If you're young, this applies to you. And it's what we allow in our lives. And if we don't allow ourselves to recognize it, it can wreck our faith. So whenever I was growing up, I grew up in the church. I was raised in the church. I grew up at First Assembly of God here in Kokomo. So that church is, an awesome church. It's got a huge place in my heart and in my life. And then I went to a Methodist or a Baptist church in Galveston, and then the Methodist church. So my entire upbringing was church. That's all I knew. Worship, going to church every Sunday, getting involved, serving people, being in a youth group. So that was my upbringing, and that was my foundation. Well, then, once I got through high school, I was voted class clown of my senior class and most outgoing, okay? So what more natural thing to do than to join the Marine Corps? Because that makes a lot of sense. But joining the Marines, I did that in 2004, and it was an actual, decision that I made. It wasn't just something I did on a whim. But I joined the Marines, and, obviously in the Marine Corps, there is the probability, especially when I joined, that I was going to deploy. And so, I went through my training, and then as soon as I got to what we call the fleet, I was deployed shortly after that. So it had been like a month or 2 I was out of training, and then I was already on my way to Iraq. And so going to Iraq, there was somebody that was there that I had been with ever since California, which was the beginning of my training. We flew to Kentucky together. We were stationed in Kentucky. I went through my training in Kentucky, and then I went to North Carolina, which is where I was stationed and where I was deployed from. And his name was Jason Little. And I called him Stuart, and he called me Alec, which that name's got kind of a sting to it now. But, we were each other's celebrities, and we were friends. And so on this deployment, about 3 months in, the worst of the worst happened. Something that you can't train for, nobody's prepared for, nobody wants. Little's tank, he was a tank operator, and I was a tank mechanic. His tank drove over an IED, and he was the driver. And if you know anything about tanks, the drivers lay pretty much in the front of the tank. And the explosion destroyed the tank, killed him instantly. The gunner of the tank, pretty much everything from the waist down was shattered. The loader and the tank commander took shrapnel, so it took out the whole crew. And that night, when that happened, they called everybody at the company office and let us know what had happened. And I'll never forget these words. Our company commander stood up front and said, "Dog Company, it's a sad day for Dog Company. We lost one of our own." And whenever I found out who it was, that hit me here. And it changed my entire life. It changed everything. I had grown up in the church. I was a joyful person. I was really outgoing, excited all the time. But at that point in time, my life changed and everything became real. I realized that I wasn't safe. Like I was in a combat zone where death was real. And nobody's prepared for that. And everybody collectively had a heaviness on our heart. We were there and we realized that it's either kill or be killed. And so that really affected us. And that brought like this darkness over us. And things were different after that. But being in the Marine Corps, you don't stop and feel emotion. You don't deal with it. You got to bury it, push past it, because you can't let it get to you. You have to function. You have to perform. That's part of it. And so we went and finished the deployment. We all came home. That's whenever I turned to alcohol, lust. I had so much anger in my heart. I had hate from what happened. Guys began to kill themselves and commit suicide, and my world was forever different. But I'll tell you, I was deployed again, and in the middle of those two deployments, the world changed for me. And the world changed as a whole because of what happened. So in the middle of those deployments, I met my wife, and she met the man of her dreams, the diamond in the rough. So, wow, this is kind of a heavy story. That moment changed me forever, and it didn't immediately change me. But, being in the military, you got to keep going, keep pushing forward. So I deployed again back to the same place, and I'll kind of tie this in later in the message, but I was given the opportunity to go on a MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit to the Mediterranean Sea, or I could choose Fallujah, Iraq again. And guess what I chose? I chose Fallujah because it was familiar, and I knew exactly what to expect. While that wasn't the best decision, because what happened on my second deployment changed me again, but that's what I chose because it was familiar. And so I'll talk about that more later. So on my second deployment, I was the one that got hurt. I got hurt twice. I broke my hand, and then I had a pretty serious head injury. It led to 16 staples, some stitches, just lots of stuff. And from that injury, I started dealing with sleeping problems, high blood pressure, anger because I was very irritable because I was always tired, and I dealt with a lot of memory problems. What was I talking about? They were bad, but I didn't really forget. But those things are just things that now I had to deal with in life. It was another layer of just stuff that weighed me down. So we finished that deployment. We had people that got hurt, but nobody else was killed, thank the Lord. And so we got back. I spent another 5 years in the Marine Corps, and then I got out. And it wasn't until I got out of the Marines that I realized I had a problem. Things that I were doing were not normal. The ways I was coping with alcohol, lust, just the anger that I carried all the time, those were not normal things. And they destructed me on the inside, and they were harmful to my family. You look at our calling as husbands. I was not fulfilling the biblical call of a husband. And so it affected my family. It affected, my extended family, friends around me. And as I thought through what was happening, I began to realize that the external battle that I dealt with in the Marine Corps, my deployments, infected the internal, which led to external turmoil. I had allowed everything that happened in my world to infect me. And it doesn't matter. You remove my story. You remove every detail about what I just shared. Everybody here, whether it's what happened this morning, whether it's what happened last week, what happened years ago that you just haven't dealt with, we all have to deal with things that happen on the outside to prevent them from infecting us in the heart. And you know, all of those things, I carried the guilt and the shame, the guilt of not bringing little home. Because when we deploy, we have each other's backs, and we are there for each other, and we're the only ones we have. You can't call the police. You can't call anybody. You're it. And I carried that responsibility. Even though it wasn't mine to carry, I did. And the ways I coped, that's what brought the shame. And so as I dealt with this guilt and shame, that infected my heart. And things were forever different. And so growing up in church, you know, I realized what it meant to be a Christian. But even though I had all of those things in my head to heart knowledge were not connected. I knew what it meant to be a Christian, raised in church, worshiping, reading the Bible, how important that was, serving in the community or in your church, and getting involved in groups. I knew the importance of all of that, but it wasn't here. Because I had allowed everything on the outside to take priority and infect me here. So, I don't know why, for me, and my height, this 15 inches is so hard to bridge, but it is. And even Rick Warren shares the same thing. There are 18 inches between your head and your heart, but unfortunately, some people will miss heaven by those 18 inches. And that perspective is powerful. We don't really realize that we can know everything in the world, but if we don't allow it to change our hearts, and PC just preached on this in the past Ephesians series, your theology has to impact your life. And so knowing isn't enough. It's really not. And so I want to share some verses with you that really spoke to me, especially over this Ephesians series. Ephesians 1, verse 4. Now, I'm using the ESV, and the ESV does not capitalize pronouns for God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So it's not wrong, it's just different. So it says, even as he chose us in him before the foundations of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. And I think it's so easy for us as people to, let me take a drink. It's so easy for us to read something and completely blow right through it and miss the entire point. And so when we look at that, you know, the words I want to hone in on are holy and blameless. We should be holy and blameless. You know, what does that even mean? If we don't stop to define words and to dig in to see what the Bible is really saying, we're going to miss it. So to be holy, to be set apart, to be completely separate of the world, to look different, and to be blameless. Who here is blameless? None of us. There are ways that we screw up all the time. Even with the best intentions, we fall short constantly. And so we read this verse, and it says, we should be holy and blameless. Well, I'm going to read that. Like, I know how I screwed up this morning, or I know what I did yesterday. I'm definitely not holy and blameless. I don't feel that. And so we have to understand that if we allow the external, whatever job situation you deal with, whatever life situation you're in right now, if you allow those things on the outside to infect you in here, you're going to miss this. And you're going to miss the power of what God's word has for us. And so we have to be careful, because 1 John 3:20 says, for whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. So now we know that our heart can condemn us. What we know up here, while we may know the truth, if we don't allow it in here, our heart can condemn us. And in the midst of our heart condemning us, God knows everything, and he is greater than our hearts. So what this says to me, that it's not about us. It's not about what I measure up to. It's not about the guilt that I carry when I shouldn't be carrying it. It's not about the shame that I feel when I shouldn't be feeling it. We just went through the Ephesians series, and so everybody knows what our identity in Christ is. And we were given a battle plan to get through it. And so, with everything that happened in my life, I knew it, and I've said that. So I was that one guy that PC was talking about that just had his helmet on, the helmet of salvation, but I had nothing else on. I allowed everything out there to infect me in here. And so the truth that this isn't ours to carry and achieve is from Colossians 1:22. It says, He, talking about Christ, has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death in order to present you, come on, help me out with the highlighted, holy and blameless and above reproach before him. So he has done the work. This isn't about you. This isn't about me. This is bigger than all of us. But I think oftentimes, because of what we have done, this becomes about us. Guilt comes from something that you do to somebody else. You feel bad. How could I have treated the person that way? Or cutting somebody off, whatever it is. That comes from an action towards another person, but the shame comes because of our being capable of doing something like that. The shame comes because we start believing the lie. We believe what the enemy says. We believe what the world says, which is not what God says. His ways are not our ways. But we believe them. We take them in, and we allow that to be a part of our heart and take root. We give the enemy a stronghold. But it says he has reconciled us. It's not something that we do. This is everything that Christ does. So you take you out of the equation, your faults, your screw-ups, everything. Take it out because that's not yours to carry. But it says, by his body of flesh, he did the work in himself to present us holy and blameless. You apply this to a food situation. You prepare food and present it to somebody. You're doing all the work. The food just does what it's told to do. You don't do anything. Christ does everything. So, being holy and blameless, there we go. Help me out with the highlighted. Being holy and blameless is not something that you achieve. It's what you receive. And we have to let our hearts know that as much as we want to work and as much as we want to do to make ourselves right in the eyes of God, you can't do it. And that's what I did for so long. It took me 10 years to meet with Little's family because I carried the guilt of his death. And while they didn't blame me, and they said that, but I carried that guilt and I let that eat me alive for 10 years when I didn't need to because I was trying to make it right within me. So, again, you take my situation out. Place your situation in. When do you need to receive being holy and blameless? Is it after a failed marriage? Is that you? Or do you have a wayward child? Or maybe you're dealing with financial problems or a broken home or some kind of health challenge. Everybody, even kids, if they're dealing with pressure from students at school, it doesn't matter. We're all in this in the same way. We have to understand that if we allow the world to speak into our heart, then we will get the ways of the world. We will buy into that, and we will believe it, and it will become our identity. Or we can allow Christ to tell us what our identity is. So, in my world, I was in all of this. In the Marines, I got out. Something was wrong. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to get all of this shame and guilt away and step into the joy of the Lord. So, let me ask you, what do? You do what you know. And for me, thank God I was raised in church. And parents, this is powerful. I didn't know what to do in this life. I wasn't with my parents. I wasn't even in the state of Indiana. And all of this happened. I had no guidance. But whenever I got lost and I didn't know where to turn, I went back to what I knew, which was church. The church is where I found redemption. It's where I found forgiveness and restoration. So I had all this stuff up in my head. I was lost. But this is what I did. I was attending church. I was worshiping. I was praying. I started studying in a life group and serving and reading the Bible. Those were the things that I was raised with. And that was the foundation that I stood on whenever I was lost. That's what I went back to. And so parents, get your kids in church. This is powerful because you may not know it now. Because for me as an 18-year-old, I didn't really start getting healthy spiritually until I was probably 25. So there's a long gap there. But you look at this list of 6 items. Attending church. Christ died for the church. So why would you ever let something that's happening on the outside of your world keep you from the very thing that Christ died for? Because the church is Christ's body. And so it is so powerful to get into church. And then worshiping. It's said, people have said it before, that you can tell what somebody's been through by the way they worship. And while that's, true for a lot of people, it's not the way everybody worships. It's all different. But man, for me, worship became so real and powerful because I knew what Christ had carried me through. I knew what he redeemed me from. And the guilt of Little's death was no longer on me. And whenever you're carrying something for years and you're finally free, man, you worship in a way that just is unreal. It's awesome. And praying. I didn't even know how to pray. You pray in church, but whenever it becomes real, where you're praying for needs, you're praying for hope, you just don't know what to do. And so I started reading a bunch of books on prayer, how to pray, how to do this, how to do that. And man, prayer became so powerful. I didn't know what I needed. Lord, give me what I need. Teach me to read. Teach me. Give me the drive and the hunger to seek you in the way that I've never sought you before. Let me understand your word. Give me a hunger to read your word, because at that time I hated reading. It just wasn't something I did. But I wanted to so bad because his word is life. So studying in a life group. For me, at this church, I got involved in the Saturday morning men's breakfast years ago. And for me, this was my step of faith. I am getting involved. I'm actually doing something. I'm getting everything up here, and I'm beginning to get it down in here. So studying in a life group became huge for me, and that was my step of faith. I got there, there were tears, there were laughs, and there were hugs, and there were a bunch of men that encouraged me and supported me spiritually. So it was huge for me. Serving in the church. Whenever you serve people, what do you do to yourself? You lower yourself and elevate other people. Christ came to serve, not to be served. I don't want to screw that one up. So why wouldn't we want to do the exact same thing that he did whenever he was on this earth? And then you get into reading the Bible, reading his word. So incredibly powerful. Every single time you read, you are sowing seeds of truth, life, and hope into your heart and into your spirit. You may not realize it, but it's happening. So don't keep yourself from reading and doing these things, because for me, before the military, everything was great. Life was good. I was happy, thriving, I guess you could say. During the military, I stopped all that stuff because it just wasn't what I wanted at that time. It wasn't what I chose. I chose to drink all the time, and that was destructive. And it wasn't only destructive to me, but later on to my family. So during the military, I was lost, but after, I went back to the things that I knew. Even though I didn't feel like it, my head knew it, but my heart wasn't there. My heart didn't feel like it. So, keeping up with this idea, there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in this book, he was trying to figure out what separates professional athletes from amateurs or from normal people. And you would expect to hear, he asked a personal trainer, these questions. You would expect to hear, talent, ability, body type, upbringing, money in the family, all that kind of stuff. But that's not what he heard. What he heard was it's the ability of the professional athlete to push past the training when things get boring, to continue to do whatever it is in their training plan, even though they don't feel like it and it doesn't seem like it's helping. So if we apply that very same mentality to the Christian world, what we will get is freedom from all of the things that we struggle with. So if you don't feel like going to church in the morning, get up, get ready, and go to church, because whether or not you realize it, your attendance here at church is working, but not for numbers. It's working for your heart. doing these things is not about the doing. It's about growing in the Lord and gaining a deeper understanding of who he is, because that understanding of who Christ is will free you. So get up and go to church. If you feel like you wake up in the morning and your kids are fighting, who's got kids here? I'm talking to you. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Your kids are acting crazy in the morning, and it's the last thing you want to do. You think to yourself, man, this is the most stressful thing. Why would I want to go to church right now? That's exactly why you need to go to church. Get up, get your kids ready, and go to church, because you may not be doing it for you, but you may be teaching your kid the foundations of what may save them later on down the road. And that is so good. And I thank my dad right back there for being that father that led us in that. You can't seem to smile because you feel hopeless. I wasn't suicidal. And a lot of my friends, over time continue to commit suicide that we deployed with. But if you feel like you can't smile, you need to be around the people who love you in the Lord, that can encourage you and speak life into your world to stop the destructive work of the enemy. So get to church. And if you feel like you're reading the Bible and you don't understand a word that it's saying, continue to read, because like I said, every single word that you read in that Bible, every word, it is sowing truth into your heart and into your spirit that you may not benefit from that very second, but whenever you need it most, when there is nothing, God will make a way and his word will come alive in you like nothing else. And that's the importance of getting scripture into your heart, because it will carry you. So, and if you're praying, if your world is just collapsing, everything is going wrong, and it's just one thing after another, you're praying and you're praying and you're praying, and you don't feel like God is hearing your prayers. You don't feel change. You don't feel anything. Continue to pray, because he hears our prayers, and it is working. Your prayers are working. But the most important thing with all of these things, even if you don't feel it, if you don't see it, he is working. It's not about you. It's about who you pray to. It's about who you look to. And so as we do these things, the guilt and shame for me came because of the things that I did, the things that happened and the things that I did, the things that I allowed on the outside to infect me in here. If you don't read the Bible because you don't understand it, the enemy is using confusion to keep you from God's word, which is life. So if we want to get rid of the guilt and shame, we have to understand that doing these things is what is going to start that process to break it off of us. But it's not about the doing. Don't forget that. It's about who is behind all of that. Who is behind the church, the word, worship, who we're worshiping, all of that. And so what do? You renew your mind. So as a kid, two of the first two Bible verses that I intentionally set out to memorize changed my life, but I knew it as a kid. I carried it with me my entire life. And then once I realized what was happening, these words came alive in my soul. It's Romans 12:1-2. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. And yes, that is the King James Version, because I learned it in the Baptist church. So that's what I know. And those words came alive in me whenever I realized what was happening. So if we read through this, I want you to help me out with the highlighted portions, and we're going to talk about it. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So, for me, I was hurt. I heard a phrase this past week: hurt people, hurt people. Free people, help free people. And so I was in this area, as Pastor Charlie would preach years ago, dealing with all of this stuff. And I would just put my face in my hands and cry, because it felt as though every word he was saying was directly to what I was going through in life. But I was in church. I was allowing God's word to renew me. And so when we look at this verse, a living sacrifice, in this time, sacrifices weren't living. Sacrifices were an animal that you slaughtered to atone for your sin. So this was different. We are to be living sacrifices. Our lives are not our own. We have a creator. We were created for a purpose. We were given gifts and a calling to fulfill God's purpose on this earth. So we must understand that we may feel like we want to do something, but if it does not accomplish the Lord's will in our life, what are we doing? We have to become a living sacrifice. And again, holy and acceptable. You see it here. But this isn't anything that we do. This is what we receive because God did it for us. Christ did it for us on the cross for us when we did not deserve it. And I'm so thankful for it. And so we are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, not conformed. The world wants to conform you. Your job, everything evil in that place, whether it be the people or the structure, it wants to conform you to the way of the world, and it's on us as Christians to recognize that. The schools want to transform the kids into the way of the world. It's on them to recognize that because they need to get into the Word. You need to get into the Word to allow what God says about you to transform your life so you don't become conformed because our lives are not our own. And as we do this and as we renew our mind, we get to the proving part. We get to prove what God's good, acceptable, and perfect will is in our life because of what he's done for us. When you have a lot to be forgiven from, you've got a lot to praise God for. In every person's story, all of your shortfalls, it's not about the pride. Don't keep that hidden because of pride. Everything that I struggled with, the alcohol, lust, anger, hate, all of that stuff is just a testament to God's goodness and what he can carry people into. Nobody is too lost. So I sat over there in that area for a while, weeks and weeks, just crying every service. I couldn't stop, which was new. I was emotionally numb in that area for a long time. One Sunday, Pastor Caylob preached. I couldn't even tell you what he preached on, but it came alive in here. I got up after service, came down to the altar team. Pastor Toph was down here, and I couldn't even talk. I was just crying for like 5 minutes. I didn't even get a word out, so it probably was pretty awkward for him. But man, he started praying for me. We have to understand that if what is going on in our lives is keeping us from the things of God, it is trying to steal, kill, and destroy. And we have to be able to do this very thing. We have to be able to trust God. We have to know that everything that is familiar in our lives, the things that we go back to because we know it, it's familiar. I probably shouldn't have gone back to Fallujah, but I did because I knew it and it was familiar. But that doesn't mean that it was good. We have to know that we can trust God, step into something new, something vulnerable, something foreign to us. Dealing with your emotions is not easy, but we have to trust God that he will carry us through it and bring us to a better place. Don't go to the destruction and dysfunction that you know. Trust God with what he can do in our lives because he is our Savior. He died and gave his life when we didn't deserve it. So don't let what you do and your shortcomings stop you from stepping into and embodying what he died to give us freely. Because once you understand the freedom that I felt down here on that day whenever I came forward and everything that I was carrying for years completely fell off of me, I no longer felt guilty for Little's death. I no longer felt shameful because of the things that I did to cope with it. I no longer had an anger and a hate in my heart for people, the very people that Christ died for. That freedom will change lives. That freedom will help free other people. And it's not because of me, and it's not for me. I am so thankful to God for what he has done in my life. Everything changed after that. My life became a mission. Who can I lead to God's freedom? Who can I help save? Who can I help keep from committing suicide and show them the goodness and freedom that God can carry them into? Because it is so good. And it's so freeing. And I pray, if you're the person that deals with anything and you're struggling with that right now, I pray for your freedom in Christ, because once you become free, once you know the enemy has no hold on you, but Christ has it all, and he is your good shepherd, and he will lead you beside still water. He will restore your soul. He is it. Man, it's so good. And it'll change everything. You'll be the person that wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're excited and ready to go because you've got a hope and a joy in your heart that you didn't have before. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, if you have a head-to-heart gap, trust God. If you don't know what to do those 6 things: going to church, worship, getting into the Word, getting into a life group, studying, serving your community, praying. Do those things. That is your battle plan for victory, because there's nothing more that the enemy, Satan, wants to do to keep you down, keep you discouraged. You wake up, you don't feel good, keep you from going to church. Your kids are acting crazy, yeah, just keep them at home. Don't even worry about it. Get your kids to church. Get to church. Become the person that thrives around God's people, because the unity in the body of Christ is what sets people free. It's what leads people to that forgiveness and what Christ has done for us. It's really exciting. And we have to renew our mind. But if you don't see any change, just like in that book, keep doing it. Keep pushing. Don't let the enemy steal, kill, and destroy, because that's what he wants. Confusion. That's of the devil. So, this Bible verse, Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Help me out with the highlighted. Peru, online, everybody. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. I want you to notice the focus of that. Trust in the Lord. He will make straight your paths. In all your ways. When you clock in at work, thank you, Lord, that you've given me a talent that I can provide for my family. My wife, she'll find a close parking spot and she'll say, thank you, Jesus. And now the kids say, thank you, Jesus. But it's not about the parking spot. It's about acknowledging God in all of it, in the small things and the big things, because whenever you are that example for your kids, they, when they're older, prayerfully will not depart from that. So, your head knowledge to your heart knowledge. You don't know what to do what you know. Renew your mind and trust God. This is your battle plan to keep the enemy from infecting your heart, your jobs, your schools. This is how we stay pure in Christ. And trusting God, while it may seem like the hardest thing to do, don't let something familiar, as destructive as it is, keep you from the goodness of God. And it reminds me of a hymn that I'm going to sing for you now. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. If you read the words to that hymn, that is my message in a bottle or in a hymn. It's so good. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just pray for your people today, myself included, everybody online and in Peru. Father, give us the strength and the awareness in our minds to know when something is trying to attack us on the inside. Stir up your word in our heart. Give us the drive to seek you in a way that we have never sought you before, in a way that nothing else matters, where your word comes alive on the inside of us, and that's the only thing that we care about, when your will becomes our will. Lead your people this week. Lord, protect their hearts and their minds and their bodies and their spirits. Protect them from the evil of the enemy, everything on the outside. Protect them from coming on the inside and infecting us. Lord, let your people be a fountain overflowing, a cup overflowing, so that nothing can get in that's bad, but everything that's good comes out. Let your freed people help free people. And I thank you for everything that you've done in our lives, everything that you've done in your church, everything that you continue to do. And I pray for those that are walking through the darkness, those that are walking through what seems like something that's not ever going to change. Lord, encourage their spirits, because you are good. You are our shepherd. You will leave the 99 for the one. Lord, in you is life. And I pray that that life is in every heart here, every heart in Peru, every heart listening online, so that they are forever changed. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Come on, give the Lord some praise.